somebody was asking me just today, who do you think wrote this judgment of the High Court? And I expressed a view, and they said, why do you think? I said, well, it's not, it's nothing so analytical, but having read hundreds of these judgments, you just know intuitively, you just take it in through the skin that's that person's judgment. But you'd be hard pressed to articulate your reasons for. Sometimes you can; it's easy enough. Justice Dean had an expression, which he used to say, "Properly understood." This case stands for that. If you saw a joint judgment with that phrase, you could bet Justice Dean had been the principal author of it.
What were your key phrases?
George Williams, who was my associate, said, "However."
An equivocation, or was it because you wanted to bring a fresh point in that no one had considered?
No, it's just however, the contrast. It was a question of contrast, yeah.
Let's just talk just briefly about your time on the bench. I mentioned before you were appointed Judge of the Court of Appeal of New South Wales in 1984, and you were on the Court of Appeal between 1994 to 1989, and then, crucially, in 1989, 14th of February 1989, you were appointed Justice of the High Court of Australia. And then you sat there for a number of years, and I wanted to ask you, because there's been much written about you during your time on the High Court, and you left behind, it says here, hundreds of judgments marked by your trademark clarity and vigour. Now, George Williams actually wrote this article and I'm reciting from. But all the same, I would be very interested to ask you, and I suppose it's because he's raised this. He says, what was distinctive about McHugh as a judge was how strongly he believed in the limits of his own power. He did not believe the High Court should drive social and political change through new interpretations of the Constitution, such as by implying new words or principles. He thought instead that this was for our elected representatives and the Australian people. And it says here, indeed, the longer he stayed as a judge, the more sceptical he became about the capacity of the court to engineer change. And then he went on to say that it made you a very different judge to Justices Sir William Dean or Lionel Murphy. Now, I know from other material I've read about you that it's not quite like that. You had, in fact, very strong principles of your own, but you saw that in many ways your role as a judge was not necessarily to give vent to those principles. Would I be right?
Well, partially. I think it's probably best if I explain it this way. Justice Toohey once made what I thought was a very perceptive comment about me. He said, "You are very radical when it comes to the common law, but you are very conservative in respect to the Constitution," and I would agree with that. As a number of articles I've written indicate, I believe that the common law, which had been developed by the judges, ought to be developed so far as it could be to meet the needs of society, so far as the common law was capable of doing it. But so far as the Constitution is concerned, it's so hard to amend. Going back a step, if the legislature thinks the judges have got it wrong, that is in the common law field, then they can legislate to overcome it. But if the High Court lays down some principle of constitutional interpretation, there's nothing the legislature can do. It can only be approved at a referendum. Parliament's not going to be running off seeking 4 states to agree and a majority of people in each state to agree to the change. So I think that courts ought to stay close to the text and structure of the Constitution.